Hey everyone, it's Adam Smith from the Matillion Field Engineering team here, taking you through a quick installation and setup video on how to configure your hybrid runner using the Container App Service in Azure. Firstly, we're going to set up the runner on Maia. So log into your account. On the left-hand side, we've got some different tiles. You need to pick the runners and instances tile. Click runners. This displays all your different runners which may or may not be configured. I'm going to click on add runner to configure a new runner. In this example today, we're just going to pick a Maia runner. We're going to give it a name, a description. We can pick either the AWS, Azure, Google Cloud or Snowflake cloud provider. We're going to pick Azure. Deployment is going to be Container App. So we're picking Container App, and you can choose either the current or stable branch. Both are fully tested. Current, you get updates more frequently, once or twice a week. Stable, you will get them on a monthly basis. Click Create Runner. Now your runner is fully set up within Maia, but it hasn't been configured within your Azure Container App environment yet. So it has the runner status as pending. You've now got access to a few different tabs here. The main ones we're going to look at today is the Deployment and Credentials tab. There is also an Allow List one to actually restrict your runner to specific projects or environments. You can get a full overview of the different parameters. We're just going to click Deployment. Now you've got the option here to launch an ARM template within Azure. There is also a way to deploy the container app using Terraform. We have a public GitHub repo which you can log into, and there is some Terraform deployment templates you can actually download and utilize if you want to use Terraform instead of ARM. So just another option available for you. But back over to our Maia runners, we're just going to launch the ARM template directly into your Azure account. I've already logged into my Azure account, so this ARM template will automatically launch into my logged into account. So I'm going to click launch. You'll get this, what it's called a custom deployment screen, and there we can go through and pick your subscription and your resource group or create a new one. I'm just going to use a pre-existing one. You can choose your region that has to match your resource group. We've got options to create a new key vault and create a managed identity. I'm just going to select true for this, but you can change these depending on what your deployment setup is. The region is pre-populated, as is the account ID and agent ID, which is taken from your configuration over in Maia. The first thing we need to configure is the subnet ID. On the docs.maia.ai documentation site, there's some really good documentation. It gives you some additional details on setting up specific resources for your Maia hybrid runner deployment within Azure. There's a few different prerequisites which is definitely worth reading. Some notable callouts are around using a NAT gateway, also the address range for your subnet. Another one which is really important, when you're setting up a private subnet, make sure that you've actually got the false tag configured. This can cause problems when you're trying to whitelist things later on. So it's not too bad if you don't need to whitelist access to certain resources, but our recommendation is if you are trying to whitelist particular access to certain resources, always set the default outbound access flag on your subnet to false. This means that you will only ever have to whitelist the private IP address. Azure can have a tendency to use the public IP address as opposed to the private IP address. So over to the virtual network I'm using, and I'm just going to go and have a look at my subnets. I'm going to pick this default 2 subnet here. If I just click on this, what we can see is that it's using the /27 address range. We've got the enable private subnet no default outbound access is actually ticked. And I'm also using a NAT gateway, so following all the best practices which have been defined in the Maia documentation. So the key thing I need is this subnet ID. So it's actually this full string. So I'm just going to click on the copy button here, go over to my custom deployment script and paste it in this field here. The account ID and agent ID are already pre-populated, but now we need the OAuth credentials. I'm going to go over to my Maia runner screen, reveal the credentials. This isn't a one-time access, so you can come back to this if you forget them. Populate the client ID, populate the client secret. The image URL is selected to current. And we've got some additional properties you could configure if you needed to set up proxy configuration, any custom certificate locations, or any additional driver or library locations, such as for your Python scripts. Another property to call out is the export logs. This is now a default setting to true. This is really useful for our support team at Matillion if you get any problems and you want us to debug them on a support ticket. If you have this set to true, it means that we get a copy of your application logs sent over to Matillion, and it means we can quickly look into any issues if you're getting any problems with anything. There are some other additional properties which we can set. Another one to just call out is the agent sizing. You can get more information on the agent sizing from the Maia documentation as well. There's this sizing page which is really useful. For this video today though, I'm just going to be using the agent size was small, but you can see there are other different sizing categories you can pick depending on your workloads. Let's click next and we will create the container app deployment now. This usually takes a few minutes to deploy, so while this is doing this, I'm just going to fast forward for you. So the deployment is now complete. We can see that there's been multiple resources which have actually been installed. Couple just to call out, obviously the main container apps environment, which is going to take a quick look at shortly. Also, you've got a new log analytics workspace. So this is where one of the places you can look at the logs which are related to the container app installation. And we've also got a manage identity, which you can use for managing access to different resources, which the container app needs to access, as well as your key vault, which can store your different secret credentials within. First one we're just going to look over, and we're just going to go over to the container apps over here. If I just click on this here, we can see it's got a succeeded status, and we've actually got, this is the container app deployment here, which we can drill into. This has also got a status of running. You can get details about the actual containers, and also you can see the different environment variables which we set previously. This can be useful later if you do want to make any changes. You'll notice that the OAuth client ID and secret are stored within the container app as specific values. And you can also go down to your monitoring here, and you can look at the logs in real time if you want to. You get both the application and the system logs, or you can also look at this within log analytics here as well if you wish to, and you can see the different logs here if you did want to analyze them. So if we go back now over to our runner configuration within Maia, what we can see is if we refresh this screen here, because it was a successful installation and your container app can connect to Maia, we've now got the runner status as running. So that is a successful installation of the container app. A couple of extra additional steps we need to do now is we do need to actually grant the container app access to the key vault. So we're just going to go and check that now within Azure. Does it have access to the manage identity of the container app? We'll go over to the Key Vault just to check this. This is our new one we just installed today. We can go over to Access Control IAM, Role Assignments, and because it's actually been granted by the ARM template, we do not need to do anything around granting access here to the Key Vault. In my setup here, I'm going to be connecting to Snowflake, and the recommended approach to connect to Snowflake now is to use a key pair. Now, to install the key pair within Azure, because the key has multiple lines, it's always recommended to do this via the CLI. Before I can add any keys to my Key Vault, I will need to be able to just add the IP address of my machine so that it won't be blocked when I try to do anything. So on the left-hand side, there is settings and networking. We can see that the firewall is enabled. I just need to add my IP address. So if I go over to firewall and click add your client IP address, and just to find my IP address, I can just search on Google. So I've just copied that, go back to the firewall here, I can add it, and then just scroll down and apply. Now if I go to my secrets, I can see that now I have access to this window, and if I want to add the Snowflake certificate to the Key Vault, I can now do this. Now the best way to do this is to do it from the command line, because the key has multiple lines. If you do it from the UI, it can cause problems when you try to use this within Maia, because you do not get the full exposure of the whole key. I'm just going to use the Cloud Shell to do this. In advance, I have actually uploaded the PEM certificate onto the Cloud Shell, and there is this simple command which you can use just to add the certificate to the Key Vault. And once again, it's having some issues because we've got a restricted Key Vault. So I'm just going to copy this client address, which is actually an Azure client address. We're just going to minimize that, go back to networking. We're going to add this client address, click apply. We'll go back over to our Cloud Shell, and now it's successfully added. So if we go back now to the secrets within our Key Vault, we should now have our Snowflake key added, and now all is left over is for you to set up your project, and more specifically your environment connection to your Snowflake environment. Hope you enjoyed the video and you found it useful. If you have any questions or queries, feel free to reach out on our support portal. Also, you'll find lots of great knowledge base articles and links to documentation, as well as an AI support agent you can use to answer questions around a whole wide range of different topics. Thanks for your time. Look forward to speaking to you again. Bye.